Considering how excited I was about the new graveyard lot type in Life and Death, it is honestly shameful that I have only built one so far. So that's my plan today. I want to finally tackle that 64 by 64 lot and build a giant cemetery. I hate to admit it, but I have kind of been putting this off because I'm just a little bit intimidated by lots this big. I'm referring to this Eternal Hollow lot in Ravenwood. I actually really like the default cemetery. I really like every single one of the default builds for this pack. You kind of feel bad bulldozing them when they're this good, but I also really want to try to make my own. So I'm really sorry, but I'm gonna get rid of it. We'll get ourselves an empty lot. And I did notice a couple things about this lot that really annoyed me. For example, you would think that this is the front, right? Like when you first load in here, it looks kind of like this is the main pathway and this one's a side path. Well, actually, when you go to upload it to the gallery, the side is the front. This is technically the front of the lot, and I didn't notice that until I finished building the entire thing. And I should warn you now, when you watch the speed build, there's gonna be a lot of me like messing with things and going back and forth because half of the battle with a lot like this is just figuring out the layout. Like, how are we gonna split up this giant lot into a way that makes sense? So kind of what I'm thinking is some sort of church-like building in the corner. We'll set this up to have a full funeral service, so it'll have all of the chairs, all the things that you'll need to host the event. I'd like to have some sort of lake somewhere, hopefully better looking than that one, and then graves all around it is sort of the plan. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive straight into the speed build and I will show you what I built. I actually built this live on my Twitch stream first. So if you want to watch back the full thing, I've got a video. It's 3.5 hours long, but I've got a video of me building this real time on my second channel called lilsimsie. And I play The Sims pretty much every day over on my Twitch channel as well. So if you want to follow me there, I'll link both my second YouTube channel and my Twitch down below for you. But don't worry, you don't have to go back and watch that video. I will give you the full rundown of this build here in this video because sped up is definitely better in this case. Surprisingly, this actually went a lot faster than I thought it would. It only took me like 3.5 hours to build, and part of why I was putting it off is because I thought it would take me like 8 or 9 hours to make a building like this. Just knowing that it's a 64 by 64 lot, I was prepared for it to be a monster of a build, but it honestly didn't take too long, and I think that's partially because a lot of it is like easy space filler, you know? The building isn't very big, and most of the lot is filled up with a giant pond. The graves take up a lot of space, and those aren't very hard to place. It doesn't take a very long time to lay out the headstones once you've got a space for them. So despite me thinking it would take forever, it didn't. It's more like a normal build. So I'm a little embarrassed that I spent so long avoiding it, especially because I had so much fun doing this. Like, doing this build has made me want to go back and make a cemetery for every single world. I've built a really small cemetery for Henford-on-Bagley already, and now I've built this one, but I'd like to make one for Windenburg. I think it would fit really nicely in there. Even having like an Oasis Springs and a Willow Creek cemetery would be nice, especially if you're playing a legacy challenge. I think it's just nice to have options because you might want to have a cemetery for your Sims family sort of nearby to where they live. That's at least how I tend to play, so I want to give people options for things that are like that. With this lot, I only use the base game and Life and Death, so if you don't have any other packs and if you're looking to download a new cemetery, this one is totally playable for you. I have found it really easy to do limited pack builds with Life and Death. I think partially because it has a lot of like the heavy hitter items that you need so bad, like a kitchen set and also beds and rugs. Honestly, having rugs, a kitchen set, and beds make a big difference, because when I try and do a build that's limited pack with like just the base game and one pack, but then I have to use a base game kitchen and a base game bed, it like doesn't feel very finished or very fancy because the base game stuff is so bland now. So Life and Death having all of those things is huge, and it's especially easy to build community lots like this with. Like, I don't really need other packs to make a cemetery. It has everything you could possibly ask for to make a cemetery. So it was certainly not difficult to make this into a limited pack build. There were a couple things about it that were difficult though. For example, the pond. I don't think I'm very good at ponds. I struggle a lot with terrain manipulation. I think I just have a hard time making them look natural because I always have them be kind of like the same bean shape. This one is not. It's more like a blob than a bean, and I think that's a good thing. I'm really happy with this pond, and I sort of based the entire layout around it. What I'm doing right now is trying to think about putting in a bridge. This was a mistake, okay? We were trying to see about ways to wrap around some pathways around that pond. I was considering putting a bridge over it. It was too big, it looked weird. Ignore that, it's gone. What we do have instead is that big giant church-like building in the back right corner. It's a little bit of a weird shape because it has kind of like almost like an addition on the side of it, which I think is pretty realistic. It looks like a lot of real life chapel style buildings buildings that I've seen. Admittedly, I don't have a lot of experience with real life churches, but it looks kind of like some pictures. So I was aiming for that. There's also a big courtyard in the center that kind of walks you up between those two pathways way up to the back where the church is. And then I put a gazebo by the pond, and that gazebo is also next to a couple of the mausoleums, or the crypts. I guess they're called crypts in the game. In total, there's 6 of them on this lot. I've got 2 in that little corner by the gazebo, and then 4 more in the way back. And those crypts are nice because they fit 20 graves each. So that might sound like a lot, but if you're like me and you play long-term legacy challenges, you might have a lot of graves. So in total, you can fit 120 in just the crypts alone. And there's also 82 graves that I put just out and about around the lot. So if you've got a lot of Sims, this will be nice for like a legacy challenge because there's plenty of space to put everybody. It's also laid out really beautifully with lots of pathways and stuff because Sims in-game will use these graveyards for 2 purposes. They'll come here to mourn, obviously, but they'll also come here to jog and like use it almost like a park. And so I wanted it to be very beautiful and very park-like around the outside. It would actually be kind of a nice place to just come hang out with your Sims. It might seem a little bit morbid, but if we're being honest, like this is kind of a replacement for a park in this world. There is no park in this world, and it works nicely for that. I even put a swing set, so if you wanted to bring your kids here, you could. The main thing though is that I wanted it to be super functional for funerals because that's what I've been using it for most often. Like obviously you come here and you leave your Sims graves here, but I would come here to host the funeral for my Sim, so I wanted to have a couple of options for it. Of course, we have that sort of church-like building, and in it, I kind of furnished it like the default graveyard is furnished, where there's sort of like a big upper stage space for the casket, there's a podium so you can give your eulogy, there's lots of seats inside so you can have your guests come in. We also have some bathrooms in that main building, and there's a kitchen back there, because I was thinking how if you hosted a funeral, there's a lot of little funeral tasks like serving food, playing instruments, and there's not a way to do that in the default cemetery, so I included a kitchen in case you forgot to bring food or if you didn't hire a caterer or whatever. I actually don't even know if you can hire a caterer for these, but that way you could like cook some mac and cheese basically if you needed to. And there's a piano so you can play the instruments. I even put some planter boxes outside, so if you wanted to do the activity where they have to plant something in honor of someone, you can harvest some flowers and then also plant more. I really tried to cover all of our bases, and there's 2 spaces for it. There's that indoor church space, but the gazebo also gets decorated like a funeral space. So I put a couple of benches there, and I also put another one of the podiums there. Hopefully it doesn't cause any issues with gameplay, because I know that they autonomously use the podium, and so it would stink if your Sims were like autonomously using both inside and outside. But at least this way you do have a couple of different options, because the outdoor one is a little bit smaller and a bit more casual. And I don't love the idea of it being so churchy here. I just kind of like the vibes of like an old Gothic sort of church. I think it looks nice in this old cemetery and it fits with the style of Ravenwood. I just don't want it to be so religious, so I tried to give some extra options. This is the part where we're gonna start jumping around a lot, because you can see I've got most of the layout done, but I start landscaping and then I start furnishing and then I go back to landscaping, so just bear with me. The whole thing is a bit strange in that way, but we're starting to include all of the lot requirements right now. And I started with benches, like going down that big walkway. I also put some of the debug lights from Life and Death, which annoyingly don't even light up. So all of those big fancy street lights that we have down the path, they don't emit any light. So I had to go back at the end and put some fake lights in them. I like sized down lights and put them in the bottom, so there's at least some light there. I could have used base game street lamps, but the Life and Death ones looked better, so I wanted to do that. And the other annoying thing is that the Life and Death benches are not classed as benches. There's like this stone outdoor bench, and it doesn't even count as a bench. The game has it classed as a love seat instead, so it thinks it's a couch basically, even though it's clearly an outdoor bench. They do this all the time where they tag items like that. Even in the last pack Love Struck that happened. There was like a metal outdoor bench that was classed as a love seat and not as a bench. Cats and Dogs has one like that that's always been that way, and that came out years ago. And they even made a huge mistake with that Love Struck bench, because there's a Love Struck lounge in that world. It was built by a creator. They did an amazing job. It's beautiful. It's the one across from the motel, so you've probably been there. And it's got some of those benches outside, kind of around some trees, and your Sims are like always sitting there stargazing. They're always sitting everywhere stargazing, but they like to sit outside on those benches. And the thing about lounges in The Sims is that they require a love seat, actually 2 love seats. And so those lot requirements were met by those benches outside because they had mistagged it, but it was fine because the lot looked beautiful. Those items were tagged as love seats, so it fit. But then they went back and changed it, and in doing so, it was no longer tagged as a love seat. So now if you go to that lot and you visit the lounge, if you go into build mode, it won't let you out of build mode because the lot is incomplete, because they changed it so they don't count as love seats anymore. So if they would have simply fixed this before, this would never have happened. But of course they released the pack like that. The official builder used them, did what they were told, it was fine. And then they went back and in trying to fix it, they broke it even more. They made it worse. That's like so typical Sims of them to do. But anyway, that happened with these as well. Those benches from Life and Death are not even benches. So I had to add extra benches that are real benches. I know, stupid. So I put those benches, the real benches, in the gazebo. Okay, well, while I'm trying to figure out some more of this stuff outside, maybe now is a good time for a slight little life update, because I tend to at least drop a couple of those in these speed builds, right? Well, I just got back from North Carolina for my cousin's wedding, and this was really fun for me because I know I keep talking about my wedding in these speed builds, but hey, you gotta drop an update somewhere, right? But it was fun for me to go because my wedding is in a couple of months, it's in February, so it was nice to see somebody else's wedding and like how they're doing all these things because I have a sort of new perspective on it now that I'm planning one myself. My cousin also had so many flowers. I've never seen so many flowers in my life. I was amazed. I was really impressed by, first of all, their floral budget, but also just the flowers they had. I was also thinking a lot based on what she did about my table placements and like the way they had their napkins and and all these little things that I honestly haven't given that much thought to. It was also freezing outside. I mean, it was cold last weekend pretty much everywhere in the US, but it was like 40 degrees Fahrenheit outside and we're all wearing like, you know, tiny dresses. That's 4 degrees Celsius. So it's not like pleasant to be outside in without a coat, especially because the ceremony was outside and also like the dinner and everything took place in a tent outside and they had a heater in the tent, but it was still kind of cold. And that's just got me scared because my wedding's in February, but it's in Florida. And it can be so hit or miss in February in Florida. It could be freezing, it could be hot. Like you just don't know. And I'm prepared for it to be cold. I kind of want it to be cool. Like that's why I didn't want to do it in the summer because the weather is less hit or miss now than it is in the summer. The problem with the summer is that it's going to downpour and there might be a hurricane. So like that's out, you know? February's better for that reason. But our ceremony's outside too. So I'm like, what am I gonna do if it's cold? But they had bought a bunch of blankets and they had like baskets full of blankets to give to people. And I thought that was a kind of good idea. So it's just something to think about. And I still have time to worry about that. Like we don't have to buy anything right now. But you know, if we get close to the event, it seems like it's gonna be bad. I might have to last minute do some extra things to prevent that. And I really hope it doesn't rain. I so hope that it doesn't rain. It does rain in February in Florida, but not a lot. So it's, I mean, this could happen to anyone anytime, but I'm just starting to get more worried about the weather. This is so bad, but I was honestly thinking about weddings a lot as I was building this, just because the layout is kind of wedding-like on the inside of the building. And me and my Twitch chat kept joking like, you know what? You could have a wedding here. You could have a wedding and a funeral here. Swap the casket out for a wedding arch and there you go. You're all good. I have no room to talk because I have hosted many dates at Cemetery since Life and Death came out. Honestly, almost every date that my Sims have been on since that pack came out has been here at the Cemetery because I've been playing so much Life and Death and I keep bringing them here because all my Sims are like macabre and chased by death and it just feels right to bring them to this lot. But there's nothing right about going on a date at a cemetery. It's like almost a little bit disrespectful. Them showing up here and woohooing in the crypt, that is so beyond disrespectful. That's not right. But anyway, we're finally starting to put all of the graves in and this was my favorite part. I had so much fun, and maybe I shouldn't say this either, but I had so much fun placing all of these graves down. It was nice for me to visualize and like think about different sections of what these different parts could be and how we could do them and what different types of graves we could do. So I've got a couple different kinds of headstone layouts. The first are those big like grave platforms, the grave sites. And then I've got a few that are a little bit more spaced out. They've got like fancy fences around them. And then we also have a couple sections that are just big wide rows of headstones, kind of like what you would see in a real life cemetery. I liked this because it seems like some of these people were like rich. Maybe they bought fancier plots. And then there's like more normal plots as well. And I also like how they're all kind of spaced out in different areas because if you wanted to use this for your own gameplay save, you could could have like one section that's just for your pets, and you could use all of those little corners for pets. There's a few that are in pairs, so you could use it for couples, maybe like your legacy founder and their partner. There's some wider areas that could be good for like all the strangers, you know, where you've got like your Sims siblings partner, or like, you know, your Sims cousin, like those people that you don't know as well. That's not a stranger, but you know what I mean. If you play a legacy, you get it. You get a lot of graves over the time, so it's nice to have some extra spaces. Or if you're like me and you just collect graves, it's nice to have these for that reason too. I think I might start using this one for my legacy challenge, because I've got this legacy that I've been playing for like 15 generations. What the heck? Okay, there's a cat here. She's come to help us. But I think I might move all of their graves to this one because it's a little bit bigger and we've got more space. It's funny because I have a different legacy. The one that I'm talking about is the YouTube legacy, my Bell family, the Nightmare Legacy Challenge as I call it. But I've got a different one that I play on Twitch. I've been playing the Not So Berry Challenge over there. And that one I'm on the 21st generation of. Oops. I poked her in the face by accident. Sorry, Snap. But I've been playing that one for a long time. And I have literally, I'm not kidding, 451 graves, all just in my front yard. Like, picture a normal Sims house and then graves everywhere you can see. The entire front yard is full of headstones. And so people kept coming into my stream the other night when I was building this, and they were like, Kayla, is this for the Not So Berry Challenge? And I had to be like, you guys, this isn't even close to being enough space. This one in total fits 204 graves, because there's 120 crypt spaces and then 82 graves outside. That's not even close to being enough for the Not So Berry Challenge, especially because I'm not done with Not So Berry yet, and I'm hoping that by the end I'll have 500. But that is gonna be a whole different beast trying to build that graveyard. I'll get to that eventually, and I will post it here on YouTube. But trying to make space for 500 graves, a 64 by 64 lot is big, but it's not that big. The reason I have so many in that save is because A, I've played for a long time, but B, I have a sort of grave collection going, and I've slowly been going on these grave hunts where I go out looking for them on other lots. Because when all of the Sims in a world die, which has happened many times in my save because I've been playing it for so long, they leave their graves at their house. So like if you go to the Landgrab's house once everybody's dead, all of their graves will just be there, like in the front yard. They'll be maybe like in the corner of the lot, and you can just pick them up and bring them home with you. And so I do that. I'll just go to every single lot in the game and I'll take all of the graves with me. And sometimes I'll go places and there'll be like 12 of them there because it's got like multiple generations of Sims. And so I just bring them home, put them in the front yard, and now all of a sudden I've got 450. So anyway, all that to say, when I start doing that cemetery, it's gonna take a long time and we're gonna have to try really hard to get them to fit, but we'll get there eventually. I think that cemetery is gonna be a little bit more like this part of our cemetery right now. And this part in my mind is like the older bit of the cemetery. It's where there's a bunch of graves all laid out. This is a bit more normal. I tried to have a variety of different types of headstones, and then I changed all the colors to be a bit different too, so that it would fit and like not look like the same thing had been copy and pasted multiple times. In my head, this is like the oldest part of the cemetery also, and I sort of like the idea of it maybe being expanded upon over time. So I was being really detailed with the story in my mind. I just was having so much fun doing this. I really shouldn't admit it, but seriously, I was having so much fun doing this. This is one of my favorite things that I've built in a long time, just because it's so different and I've wanted to do it for so long, and also it's just silly. It's silly and fun to make a cemetery. I wanted to point out a couple of other things because there is a lot of debug that I used here. I've used a fair bit of debug decor, like the debug lights, but we also have that giant debug fountain right in the middle. And then I got some little debug planters and some other debug landscaping. There's a couple ones that have some like kind of dead looking ivy overflowing. I put those around in a few places. There's also these like big planter boxes. I can't use my hands to show you because the cat's here, but there's some big planter boxes that I put in the corners. I was trying to not overdo it with landscaping, so I wanted to have some nice, like very manicured different bits, and I also put in some wildflowers around the outside towards the end. One of the last things that I did was go back through and just put some pretty purple flowers outside. I realize this is all over the place. I just keep yapping about like anything and everything, but I remembered one more thing I wanted to tell you. I've got one more life update, okay? This weekend, I read my 100th book of the year. I guess, well, last weekend for you. I'm recording this a little bit in advance because of Thanksgiving, but I was quite proud of myself for that. My 100th book was a romance book called The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center, and I really liked it. I have been meaning to read it for a long time and I never got around to it, but it was really good, I thought. My goal was to read 100 books this year, and I am way ahead of schedule too, because it's only November, so I was pretty thrilled. I finished it on the plane coming back from North Carolina, and I made Dan take a picture of me holding up my Kindle when I finished it because I was so excited about it. Okay, sorry, back to the game, back to the build. I'm doing those wildflowers now that I had talked about before, and that's pretty much the bulk of the landscaping. Sometimes I'll do like really lush overgrown stuff in the game, but I felt like this one, it was nicer to just let the park shine, like let the grass in the park part shine. So I tried not to do too much. It's mostly just bushes, a few nicely manicured trees, and then these purpley wildflowers. I will come back through and add terrain paint to them, but I did that last. I think it looks a little bit better with a little bit of dirt underneath them, but I wanted to wait until the very end of the build to do it because you know how this game is. It keeps trying to delete my terrain paint, so I wasn't gonna give it any opportunities to do that. I think I also failed to mention a couple of the other like fun little things that I added to the outside of this place. I put some chess tables around the fountain in the front because again, I was trying to make it a little bit park-like, so I put some chess for you to play, and I also put a telescope over by the pond. I was joking about how it's nice. I mean, if your sim dies here from the telescope, at least you're already at the graveyard. It makes it easy for your sim's family. And then I put a couple of picnic tables and also a grill on the other side of the pond, like kind of underneath a big willow tree. I figured you could make some nice food, you could come and sit outside, especially if you wanted your sims to come here and like memorialize someone. It would be nice to just come and hang out and like remember them that way. So I was trying to add some amenities like that. And now we're at the gazebo, and this is where I decided that I wanted to turn this into a second funeral spot because I knew that I had to have those benches because again, for some reason the other ones don't count. So I was trying to think of a way to make them make more sense, and I kind of got thinking about how it would be cool to have another more casual funeral area. For a second there I wanted to put a bar. I don't know what I was thinking with that. That was a way worse idea. The funeral space makes more sense. So I put some flowers, we've got a photo table, and then I put one of those memorial display items in the back because you could put the urn there or something if you wanted to. And I think you could get some really nice screenshots of your sims here too with the water behind them. At the very end, I go back through and I add a bunch of little things to the water like ducks and fish and some lily pads, and so it turns out to be really beautiful and full of life. Haha, funny, it's a cemetery full of life, but I think it's actually really sweet. Okay, so here is where I'm going through and putting in those lights. I had talked about this before. For a second, I thought about trying to put lights like all the way down the whole path, but I decided it was maybe better to have it be a little bit darker, and instead I focused the lights on some of the more high traffic areas like these different courtyards. I didn't put them all over the place, so the grassy parts are still kind of dark, but the places where your sims walk are lit up, or at least partially lit up. I don't think it needs to be bright though. It's okay if it's a little dark outside. This little room is like a custom crypt. You might have seen it for a second there. I'll come back and add a couple things to it at the very end, but I'll mention it now. I put that there just because I really wanted to have the coffin, because there's a coffin that your sims can woohoo in, and they can also sleep in it. And so I wanted to put that at least somewhere in this build. And so I had to make my own like custom little room for it. It ended up being kind of big, but I put the coffin in the middle and then a wall of cabinets in the back because I liked the idea of using that as like a custom spot for your sims, because you could just line up urns on those back counters. I'll show you more when I do the tour at the end of the video, but you could also use it to woohoo if you wanted to. The only problem is that it's right in the front of the lot. I didn't realize that that was the front for the gallery when I built it, and so I was kind of sad that that was so visible. I know I complain about this all the time, but I so wish you could change the gallery photo. This is like a non-stop issue. Even the other day in that wintry Christmas cabin that I built, I was so mad because there was a tree blocking the front of the gallery picture. It never ends. But we are finally doing some last minute touches on the outside. We're gonna go back to the inside in a second, but right now I'm doing some last minute details with the pond. I put some fireflies everywhere outside. I know it looks really weird in build mode because there's just squares everywhere, but in live mode, those are VFX. So you'll see like the dragonfly spawn, you'll see the fish spawn. You won't see the box when the game is like actually playing. It's only visible in build mode. And I will show you that at the end too. We'll do like a proper tour in live mode so you can see it all how it's supposed to be. We're back inside now because I had before put like the main layout down. I put most of the furniture in just so I could visualize it, but I didn't properly decorate it. So we're coming back for this last bit to decorate the rest of the inside. I'm adding a little table with a guest book in the back. We've got a fireplace nearby. Some people in my chat thought the guest book was a weird idea because it's like a funeral, but I actually think it's kind of sweet. I was picturing like, obviously pretending, because your sims can't actually do this, but I was picturing pretending like maybe people came and write memories about the person, because what a nice thing for the family to have afterward, to have that like lovely book of memories of their loved one. But obviously in game, it's just a table with a clutter object on it. It doesn't actually do anything. Up top, we have that actual coffin item, and that your sims can use for mourning, like as part of the event. But there's also a piano next to it, and then a little table off to the side. And on that table, I put the grimophone so we could have some music. And there's another table that's just kind of empty with flowers. And I thought that might be a nice place for you to put food in case you do serve food here at this funeral. You could like lay out the grilled cheese on that table table because there's not really anywhere else to put it. There is a small kitchen area, and this might be kind of a weird addition, but it looks kind of like it's almost like the staff room of the funeral home. So there is a kitchen. You can cook if you wanted a cake or something for the event. There's also a desk, there's some filing cabinets, and a small little table. I don't really want your Sims to autonomously go in here, so that's kind of a downside, but I think it's useful for gameplay. Also, if you're playing like Rags to Riches, it's nice to have a computer here because you could come use theirs instead of having to go to the library. You could basically live here if you're playing Rags to Riches because you can sleep in the coffin, you can use the toilet and the sinks to get your hygiene up, you can eat food here, you've got a computer. You never have to leave the cemetery. You can even fish and like use the telescope to get your fun up. There's chess tables. Like you literally have everything you could possibly need on this lot. Okay, so just now I went and got a sim and brought a person here so that I could change the lighting color because I wanted it to be a little bit more yellow toned, and we're pretty much just doing some last minute final touches now. I kind of went through and tested to make sure it worked because I put some chandeliers in there and I wanted to make sure she could get underneath them because they were kind of tall. I wanted to see how all of the ducks and stuff looked in game too before I finished it, and then I did some last minute touches for lighting, and then the final thing was terrain paint. And the terrain paint was quite the process because obviously it's a 64 by 64 lot, and I put terrain paint pretty much everywhere. It's underneath all of the plants. It's underneath kind of like framing all of the pathways. I added some extra like little flower terrain paint in a couple spots to have some more detail on the floor. But honestly, the rest of this is just terrain paint, so I don't have to show you the whole thing. I'll probably wrap the speed build up here, and then we'll jump back into the game real time so I can give you a proper tour of the finished product. So as a reminder, we're on that Eternal Hollow 64 by 64 lot for the cemetery. There's a couple lot requirements for cemeteries, but they're not too specific. You need to have one urn, a toilet, 2 benches, and a trash can. That's the only requirement, so you could make a very tiny one if you wanted. It's called the Ravenwood Cemetery on the gallery, and you can see it's like the wrong direction, but it's fine. Let me place it down real quick. So this is what a little top-down overview looks like in build mode, but I would like to bring a sim here so we can see it for real. You can also see it from the map view like this, and I think it looks really good from the map with the giant pond. I was really excited about this. Let me cheat and make it sunny so that we can see it. Oh, that's raining. That's not what I wanted. Well, you can kind of see a bit better how the pond looks. So there's some dragonflies, we've got the ducks. It looks a lot better when you don't have to see all of those little boxes. I like how it has swans too. Oh, those ones have babies. That's so cute. Okay, well, when you first walk in, technically you'll walk in over here. I'm gonna ignore that because I want this to be the front. When you first walk in, we've got this huge, beautiful fountain. It animates so nicely. We've got like a bunch of goat motifs on it. Somebody's already playing chess over here. When you come all the way up, we've got these beautiful benches, love seats, lining the walkway, and that takes you up to the front of the church building. I put one of these goat statues. The goat is the founder of the town, so I put one right in the middle. And then in the building, we have that main funeral area with everything you need to host one of the funerals. I think that this Grim Reaper picture is maybe like a little bit insensitive, but it's fine because it's cute. And then further down, we have 2 small bathrooms and then that small little staff room we talked about. So that's the main building. There's also a building over here in this corner, and this is that like custom crypt that I talked about. I was kind of picturing that you might want to put your own urns on this if you wanted to use this as your space, because you could just line them up back there. In the front corners, we've got a couple small sections of just a bunch of graves, and you'll also see that I've dotted around a few death flower plants. They're just kind of in the environment. I tried to hide them in a couple spots, but there's 5 in total. We've got a bunch more graves back here. Kind of around this back corner, there's a few older looking plots. And then I really liked this. I thought this little corner with the crypts was so cool. And there's a pretty tree in the middle. This is where the gazebo with the funeral stuff is. You can come further down, we have a swing set. There's some more fancy graves here. The telescope I talked about. And then in the way back, there's 4 more crypts, kind of in like a little plaza. And there's a bunch of grave sites on either side. I put these in pairs because I thought it would be kind of nice for couples if we wanted to do that. I also put some debug fences in between it. And then over here, there's just 6 total. I was kind of picturing for gameplay, like this might be good for your legacy challenge. You could have your pets over here in this section. And I didn't add any decor onto these. I left them kind of plain. I did that on purpose because I kind of wanted to give you room to decorate them as you saw fit. Because, you know, you might bring your legacy sim here and you could decorate it. You could slot their headstone onto it, you know. So I just tried to leave some open room for you to play. But that, my friends, is the fully finished product. Wait, no, hold on. I've got these picnic tables over here. And then on the far side, what is that? Why is that on the floor? On the far side, side, there's some plants. So I've got like a tulip, a lily, there's roses. So when these are in season, you could harvest one and then you could plant them in the empty spaces, because that is one of the things that you can do, the objectives for a funeral. Or I thought you could maybe like bring one of the roses, and if you wanted to, you could like place that on somebody's grave. I just thought it was nice for gameplay to have those options, but that is the fully finished product. I'll stop now. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really enjoyed doing this build. I know it's been a long one, so if you're still here, thank you. I have my Twitch and also my second channel linked down below in case you want to go check those out. Happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Okay, bye everybody. If you only knew how chaotic my cats were being during this video, I had to pause and keep talking like 15 times because they kept yelling, which is fun, but maybe not so good for YouTube content.